All right. We're back for another episode of the Bad Ideas podcast with Jeff Perry. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. Great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
You're the Chief Revenue Officer at Carta, and you've kind of been at the top of three of the most pivotal technology companies in all of software over the last 25 years. What's the day-to-day like for you? What do you spend most of your time thinking on, and what types of bad ideas do you tend to encounter just in the daily routine?
Yeah, so you mentioned three different companies. I've had a privilege to learn and grow up at Oracle, and then an opportunity to get a taste of smaller company at DocuSign and the path through their IPO, and then started kind of a little earlier at Carta, and had a chance to help build out the go-to-market functions of the company. So I guess in doing so, the day-to-day functions are like they change every day because Carta is a fast-paced, evolving organization, and we have three different business units as part of the organization. And so they have different needs inside of, and they're at different stages of their own growth. So they have different needs inside of each of those business units. And so the day is spent bouncing around on different topics on, how do we build more pipeline and quality pipeline? How do we execute against that pipeline? How do we make sure that we've created this ecosystem of business development through our partners in our channel? And for us, that's law firms and VC firms. And now we're expanding that into alternative assets as well, and not just the venture capital asset class, but private equity and real estate and all these other things. So there's no shortage of ideas bouncing around. And I think, it's one of the things I love and appreciate about Henry, our CEO, is, he challenges everyone to come with ideas. And, there aren't bad ideas. Sometimes there's, a good idea or a bad idea, and then is it good execution or bad execution? And sometimes it can be a good idea with bad execution, or it could be timing as well. And so, Henry's got this mentality of like, keep challenging the system on finding new ideas. And a perfect example of that is, we recently launched a new product that, unfortunately, not all companies survive, and some do go out of business, and especially in the venture capital space. And so now we've built a product that was based off an idea of how do we help companies that are winding down, because that's a difficult process, and it involves their cap table and their final finances. And so we've created a product off of what was a bad idea at the time, and it became a good idea. And now we're going to be able to help companies wind down, and it's another source of revenue for us too.
Well, that's amazing. I love that you touched on good execution being kind of the catalyst. And I think the reason I was most excited to have you on was because you've been around so much amazing execution over the course of your career. And, causality or correlative relationships aside, like maybe people just follow you and they know what the success is going to be. But we're also going to...
Thank you. I think there's more to it than it's not just me. I've been fortunate to be surrounded by, a bunch of great people. And, I've always tried to just bring some of the different experiences that I've gained along the way to a new organization, and then supplement that with all of the great experience that some of the people that are in-house already have, and leverage both sides of that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're going to challenge your notion that there are no bad ideas with the show. So, quick rundown. We'll share the bad idea that you've not seen. So this is all true, authentic reaction. We'll talk about why it's bad until we run out of bad stuff to say, and then see if we can turn it into something good. Sound good?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Right.
Sounds bad or good. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I hope it's bad. We'll see. So fingers crossed. The bad idea is meeting mirage manager automatically cancels meetings on your calendar you never intended to attend. It's like an app that clears out your calendar for you somehow based on your meeting preferences.
Okay.
So I know, this is what comes to mind for me. I know a lot of people who spend money on calendar apps, and, people who spend money on someone to manage their calendar, have teams that manage their calendar. I know at your level, you have to have a team to do that because it's just not a good use of your time. So like free time is valuable, but as a business, like paying for software that would or could potentially arbitrarily clear your calendar for you seems like kind of a high risk deal, right?
Sounds like could be a bad idea. Yeah. I mean, what happens if it clears out a meeting that could be the meeting that brought up the new product idea that led to the next $100 million business internally, and we didn't have that meeting because it got cleared by this new tool. So
yeah,
that would be terrible.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, so I know you at your level have a team that does this, but how do you decide like where to put time? Because meeting people new, like you just said, surfaces new ideas, exposes you to new opportunities. So there's a qualification process, but at some point you're taking some of a like a leap of faith there, right? At
There
every level,
definitely
kind
is.
of.
So, and everyone's got a different balance and different, business needs. And I mentioned to you earlier, we have three different business units inside of our organization.
Yeah.
So I have to allocate my meeting time, somewhat by those BUs and make sure that I
Yeah.
have, equal attention to each. So that's part of it. And then I would also say sort of the tie breaking factor in all of this is always like you take the meeting that involves number one, working with a customer, whether it's an existing customer or a prospect. Like you're always learning, and it helps you improve the product. It helps me
Yeah.
improve our sales process. So that would be priority number one, and then the second would be an internal meeting that is something about like career development or career progression for our employee base, because the more I can spend time with either customers or our existing employees and one-on-one or in small group versus large group, you create that connectivity and you create those different career opportunities for people. And I personally learn a ton from all the folks in
Uh-huh.
our organization.
Yeah. So that's kind of the supply and demand side, your team and the customers that want access to
Definitely, yeah.
them via
And
software.
most recently, I've spent far more of my time with customer calls and customer engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it something, I mean, with the team that manages your calendar, is it something that you get to a point where you have a rule set and you can completely trust them to tell you where to be? Or are you ever kind of reprioritizing what you want to focus on based on like the challenge landscape you're looking at?
Yeah, so I actually have a mighty team of one, my EA that manages my calendar
Yeah.
and sort of the flow of meetings. But I'd say there are sort of subsets of like the mandatory meetings that are things that come from like the exec team that I have to be a part of. Then there are meetings that with my EA Nicole that I've worked with for I think 12 years now, so she understands sort of what is top priority for me without me even having to say it most of the time.
Yeah.
So she knows kind of the meetings that I need to be in, the ones I want to have, and then how we fill the rest of the time based on those other, categories that I gave you of prioritization.
Yeah. Interesting. So what's rattling around the brain. So we have how it's executed at the top level with you now, but we also have like your history of companies. We have Oracle automating how you kind of manage data, customer data, those relationships. DocuSign, how you manage documents and signature collection, and now Carta, how you manage the hard stuff,
Yeah.
the legal back end of your business. Um,
Ironically,
you
the
know,
last two were eliminating the paper process from both of those, right? Eliminating paper from the signature and eliminating the
yeah,
actual physical stock certificate itself and doing that in a digital form. So,
yeah, yeah. So like big time automation of very complex things. When you think about an idea like this, I imagine someone came up with it because calendars are so simple and time, at least I think time is the most valuable resource by far. So they were thinking, hey, let's automate the management of time. But is it something, and I'm sure before Carta got started, someone was like, oh, we could do this in tech, and 1,000 people said no way. Is
yeah.
is managing a calendar something like that? Do you think tech, maybe with AI, could get to a point where it could steer you in the right direction?
Well, I think it could, and I don't want to make assumptions, but I'll make one here. The
Yeah.
idea might have sparked from someone getting tired of like having the meeting about the meeting, and
Yeah.
that leads
Yeah.
to calendar clutter, and therefore a need to be able to eliminate meetings from the calendar. And I'm a fan of like let's not overschedule the calendar and leave some time blocks, because there will be issues and topics that come up that I want to just say, let's not send a group Slack about and have a 5-hour Slack exchange about it. Let's get the four stakeholders about this topic in a meeting and spend 15 minutes and just talk it out with each other and get to a resolution and action items and designate responsibility for what the action items are, and then you move forward.
Yeah. So you guys, your team now is on Slack. Is that what you use for
We do,
group
yes.
outcomes?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, do you find it helps more than hurts? Is there a balance there?
So there's balance. For some people, Slack is like the way to live. For me, it is not. I'd prefer to walk the floor and have a conversation with our sales team, our sales leaders, our business development team, my marketing counterparts, my product counterparts. Others are really good in spending time in Slack and detailing and writing. I just find that I don't have as much time to be able to do that. And I end up having a bunch of unread Slacks. So I'm more about the human interaction more so than the behind the scenes writing of it.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it.
I do understand for some people it's a great way to document and track like who's responsible for things and what the action items are and what next steps are. So there's definitely a lot of value in it too.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the hair splitting when it comes to Slack, because you can organize your tasks there, but they can also get lost so easily. Like discussion happens so fast and just gets pushed endlessly up. You lose a lot of the context.
Yeah, I find myself using the mark as unread feature a lot more these days, because I'll read something and I'm like, I need to come back to that, but I want to make sure it stays top of mind too.
Yeah. All of this, including our idea, it just keeps coming back to time. Like Slack makes it a little faster. Like that's what we're trying to protect. But there has to be. I mean, imagine a future dream state where everybody has an automated calendar manager, that are synced.
Yeah.
So everyone knows what's valuable to everybody else. I mean, the net productivity, at least within an organization, the net productivity lift would be amazing. You tune that based on the OKRs for the quarter, and everybody starts focusing on the thing that you want.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah. How would it factor in like external requests as well? Because I do get a lot of those too.
That's a really good question. Maybe
like at some point you reached out to me about joining this call with you. That has to fit into the calendar somewhere. Right?
I know. And that's why this is so hard. I think that's why this is a bad idea on its own, because it has to factor in things it can't be prepared to understand.
Yeah.
Like new things that show up that, you decide justify time, or you feel like justify time. I think that's why, going back to Oracle, just because of its history, it's so hard to find something that can scale to that level without constantly working to improve it. It's not an overnight thing or like one idea. It's 18 years, 20 years of execution and constantly refining the tool to what the customers ask for until it gets that fit and scale.
Yeah, and that's something I've learned along the way through my career is like, especially at Oracle, like we had so many products, and then we were building new products and acquiring new products. DocuSign was a little different. Carta, same thing, 3 different business units, multiple products inside of each business unit. So for me, that's awesome. It gives you different, some of those will be more successful than others. Some may fail. That's okay. Some are bad ideas or maybe bad execution. But there's different opportunities to grow those businesses. And that's what you're looking for. So in this bad idea of the calendar app, like what is the next product that this team will sell? Because they'll probably get to 10 million in ARR. But how are you going to get to 100 million off of one product? So
you have to scale or make it external. That's beyond me. So that's what lives in your head. Like, how do we get the next 100 million or 500
Absolutely.
million?
Yeah. And that's because of the size and stage we're at now. But like a $2 million idea, it doesn't move the needle for us. Like when you're on a path to be $1 billion plus ARR business, you got to think in the hundreds of millions and how you build those businesses.
So this is super exciting. So when something floats in front of you, how do you start to put it into a framework to decide this justifies attention? Like what's the
I think I'm fortunate we have an army of strategy folks at Carta that are absolutely brilliant people, and they work as great business partners with us. And so an idea starts as an idea, and then we meet and we discuss and we poke holes in it. We figure out, are there ways that we can partner with other companies to do the idea, or their connectivity opportunities with partners in that area. Has anyone done this before? What does the TAM look like? Is it real TAM or is it small TAM? And then you start to unpack like, okay, does this have legs, and is it something that we should invest in? And then one of the things we do, I think, very well at Carta is we test. And we launched a couple of years back, we launched a compensation benchmarking product based on all of the data that we have on equity compensation and cash compensation. Yeah. And we tested that to see if like customers that would resonate. And if you're a Series B company and you're doing a round of funding and you're going to hire a director of marketing, don't you want to know exactly how much equity you should give them and how much cash comp you should pay them based on what the market does, not what like your friend told you or your 5 of your different VCs told you. We actually have the real data. And so that became an idea that we tested in the market. And now that's scaling to a $10 million plus business and hopefully be on that path to 100 plus.
Yeah. So you know what it has the potential to do, and then you put it into some kind of validation framework.
Exactly.
To, constantly make sure it makes sense to take the next step before you do.
Exactly. And, I think Henry would be the first to tell you, like, there's been many good ideas that have come across the table and, we've tried them and we've experimented and, some of them we've had to kill. And, that's, I think, part of learning in business and the path to growth is some of the ideas are going to work and some of them are. The big thing that, Henry's taught me is like, you have to learn quickly and then act quickly. So the moment this isn't the business that's going to really take off, that you have to be decisive in pivoting and do that quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're, this, I'm sure companies you advise bump into this all the time, but guys on the sales side are usually in small companies that don't grow to your scale, segregated from all the ideation. There's like revenue is this dirty thing out in the front. In your organizations, how does the feedback and interaction with customers inform the direction of the business? Because that runs back through you, right?
It does. I would say in this role, I've had sort of the most exposure to like the importance of connectivity between sales and product. At Oracle, product was created and you go sell it and the engine works, right? I think in what we're doing at Carta, it's very different and it's different by business unit. And so when I think about our fund admin business right now, that's an area where the product is developing and we're being disruptive. We're taking what is traditionally a services industry and turning it into a software and services industry. That comes with product enhancements that have to continue to happen based on the feedback that you get from the customer. And in that case, it's not just software feedback, but it's also the services component of it too. So it's really complicated.
Yeah. So you're ingesting that feedback against your goals and weighing those against net new ideas to figure out where resources go. And that
definitely, yeah. I mean, that the resource allocation is a really important part of it because, as you get signal of like where you need product enhancement, then our product team needs to designate more headcount to help either build new product or work on existing product, right? And then you have to do that while you have enough resources dedicated to the cap table business, which is the flagship product at this point for the company. But know that at some point other products will do that. So it's sort of the passing of the torch of, the next lead product for the company.
That's got to be such a gift to be able to keep track of all these things at the same time and like know where your brain needs to go to make sure you're not, getting tied up in something that really doesn't move the needle in the long run, especially.
It really is. And back to the calendar topic is, I often get, the first thing people usually say to a meeting is like, thank you for meeting with me. I know you're so busy and your calendar is so full. I'm like, well, actually, this is my job and I love it. So I want to be meeting with you. But what I think people don't realize is it's not as much about how many meetings or the length of time of meetings, but it's more about the pivoting of topic from meeting to meeting, because I'll be in one meeting that is about, SDRs in the corporation's business. And then the next meeting is about, working on a new product for private equity funds and a product that you sell to a big PE firm. And it's just so different. So the moment I think about how challenging that is for me, I think about Henry and his role and like how every meeting is so different and his mind almost like stops and then restarts on like the new topic at hand.
That's a gift. Do you structure them so at least they're topically ordered so you can kind of stay in the same mindset?
I wish we could, but maybe that's what this bad idea isn't factoring in. It should be like, arranging the calendar based off of topic because ours seem to bounce day by day. So, I've actually thought about this, like should Monday be corporations day and Tuesday be fund admin day and Thursday be alternative assets day. And you just kind of focus that way. The reality is like the flow of the business doesn't allow for that for me at this time, at least.
Mm-hmm. That's super interesting. And then specifically back on the feedback side, because it's so part of the mission of the show, I think, and I messaged this to you when we tried to get you on. I think there's a extra premium placed on the idea at least externally facing, right? When people are starting companies or maybe young in their career, like the idea is the big thing. They'll look at someone who succeeded or founded Carta and say, oh, they had a great idea.
Yeah.
But when in reality, it's the execution behind the idea and prioritizing all of these things and building teams of people that can also do that. So like you're prioritizing 10 and the person under you is prioritizing 10 and so on. That, all working in harmony create the momentum that, you've built successfully multiple times. And I think, I think that comes back to timing and kind of balancing timing. In a way that you're always leveraging the right thing to move your business forward and not distracted by like the panache or the veneer of the idea.
Yeah,
and I think like people watch Shark Tank and then want to go start a startup because they saw something that was super catchy and they don't know that guys like you exist, and that's why companies are huge. And showing that, I mean, that was kind of the mission here, I think.
Well, that's a tough one for me to answer because there probably would be no Carta without all those people that watch Shark Tank and have the idea, because that's what Carta is all about. Supporting them in their cap table and the venture community, right? So we want founders to start companies, and that the entrepreneurship is the foundation of Carta. Really is like people starting companies and then need to get funded, and we help them with that. So I want that to definitely continue. But I think back to the idea piece is like, Henry had the idea of cap table, and that helped us start the corporations business back in 2013. And I have a ton of respect for the folks that were on the team back then that were selling the first, it was eShares at the time, but selling the first cap table deals to really small customers. But it's less about the idea and then what the idea becomes and the execution of it. So if you think about it, was like selling cap table software to early stage founders as they were like getting their first round of seed funding and getting their cap table on Carta and no longer using a lawyer to manage that. And so we've taken the same template and put that in the other business units. But the idea was a little different. It was, okay, we can do this for the venture capital community in fund administration and create products for them. Let's use the same template and say, we're not going to start and try and win Sequoia or Andreessen or one of the biggest, VC firms in the world and try and go do fund administration for them. Let's take the recipe that worked in the corporations business and start with first time fund managers. And those are the ones that helped us build the venture capital business, which we now call the fund admin business. And then, like we did in the corporation side, you start with seed stage, early SMB, and you grow and build up market. And we've done this, you run the same playbook in our venture capital business and fund admin business now too.
Yeah. So just, extracting that back on my convoluted message beforehand about startups, the playbook is the value. That's kind of the core message I want to get out there. Like the playbook and the way that you can iterate on that is what makes everything work. Because I think, I'm sure when Carta got started, a lot of people said, this is never going to work. Like, you're never going to displace accountants and lawyers. It's impossible. States won't approve it. And then you did it, and it was the playbook that made it work. It wasn't the original idea,
Yeah, and the playbook changes, and that's okay. You don't have to stick with the same playbook. You have to be able to adapt and evolve. And I use the business development channel as an example for that with us. With law firms, originally, like, we were enemies, right? Law firms viewed Carta as taking billing hours and taking a service that they provided one of their clients and moving it into a software format. And it took us time to build the credibility and trust with that community and the relationships with those law firms to be a partner of theirs and help their clients too. And so there's a bit of a back and forth pivot that occurs as you're figuring out sort of where you fit, into each piece of that templated playbook.
Yeah. Do you, digging down into partners and channels is getting into new markets. Once you validate an idea, the TAM is right, it could get big enough for us to grow. And then you start look at validating that, like, how do we put it out into the market and collect some feedback? Do you look at, do we go to partners first? Do we go direct to consumers first? Do we go to existing customers first? Do you have kind of like a formula for that sort of thing?
So I think you got to sort of read and assess what's happening inside of the businesses, right? And so if I go back to the fund administration example, the venture capital space, we've had a lot of success there. That business grew to 100 million plus very quickly. And then you start to look at it and you say, okay, what's the rest of the TAM look like? And are there other asset classes that you can you can start to break into. And previously we had said, if it's a private equity firm or fund that we're not right for Carta, they're not right for Carta, we're going to pass on that opportunity. And now after a couple of years of doing that, we've actually re-explored it and said, you know what, we can actually do this and we can help these customers. We're going to be open to business for private equity firms as well. How do we best do that? And we take the similar playbook of sort of the outbound go-to-market outreach that we have, but we also have to think a bit differently. And so we use our business development channel to do that. And that forces us to not just think about law firms and VC firms like we did before, but we started working closely with a lot of fractional CFOs, for example, where they work with multiple firms and we create a partnership with them. Yeah. And, the amount of times firms and funds come to us and we can advise them and say, you're kind of at the stage now where you probably need some type of in-house CFO help. It might not be a full-time gig where you're hiring the CFO full-time, but we have a bunch of partners that are fractional CFOs that can help you. And in turn, so we do a partnership with them. And then in turn, they share opportunities with us as well that help us break into these new markets.
That's awesome. It's like, it's exponential and it's value add at the same time.
Yeah. And these are things like, when I first met, Henry and team, 5.5 years ago, we weren't talking about any of these things. We were talking about cap table and how to expand that business. And, 5.5+ years later, we're talking about different business units and how to expand those. So it's fast paced, which I enjoy. Yeah.
You think that's partly why Carta's going so fast? Just because you guys are like pivoting and using these structures to move into new spaces so quickly?
I think so. I think, and I think a lot of the pace is sets at the top. Like Henry moves quickly. He's brilliant. He's visionary. He knows this market better than anyone in the world, I would argue. And so he sets the tone of the speed and velocity that we move at. And then, I think after years of just sort of hiring people that can keep up at that pace and operate that way and operate in an environment knowing that like we're going to pivot and we're going to make changes and we might do that quickly. That can be paralyzing for some people. It can be invigorating for others. And I feel like we have the right team and culture that embrace that. And we go figure out what the next challenge is and how we can help a customer in a different way or help a new customer in a way we didn't know we could have before.
Mm-hmm. So all you need in parallel is an app to manage your calendar so you guys can keep up the speed, right?
That simple. Yes.
Yeah, we wish. Well, what's the final verdict on this idea? I think on its own, it's incomplete at least, right? Is it bad? What do we think?
I think incomplete. Yeah, and I would hate to be on the Shark Tank and not invest in it and pass on what could be a great idea, but I also would hate to pass on that meeting or have that meeting removed. That could be my next really big Shark Tank idea, right?
I know the time risk is far greater than the value, so you'd never pay for it. Well, thank you so much for hopping on and jamming on this with us.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you.
Do you do any speaking? Where can people find you if they want to?
Yeah, I mean, find me on LinkedIn. Jeff Perry, I'm the CRO of Carta. I'd be happy to be found there and connect with anyone. I love sharing ideas. If we can help you, if you're a founder or a funder in any way, we have a huge suite of products, or we just learn from each other. We're working on a bunch of different ideas, and I mentioned a closings product for companies that are winding down. That was a new idea that sparked over the course of the last quarter. I don't even know what the next thing will be in the next couple quarters, but we're always open to different interactions.
Yeah, super grateful to hear from someone like you that's been a part of so many great teams and like in the middle of one of the fastest moving ones, probably in the entire tech space right now. So thank you so much for making time for us.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I've been fortunate to be a part of some great teams and work with great leaders. So it's been a fun ride to this point. I appreciate you having me on today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Nick.